There is a quiet power in a woman who lives alone and answers to no one's expectations but her own. It doesn't announce itself loudly, it doesn't beg for attention, it doesn't explain, it simply exists, steady, observant, and unshakable. A woman living alone without boyfriends is not incomplete. She is not waiting, she is not lacking, she is choosing, and choice is where power begins. When a woman stands on her own, she learns something most people never do: how to sit with herself without distraction. No emotional noise, no borrowed identity, no constant negotiation of who she needs to be to keep someone close. In that space, she hears her own thoughts clearly. She recognizes her instincts. She sharpens her judgment. And once a woman trusts her own judgment, she becomes very difficult to manipulate. Living alone teaches discipline. You manage your time, your money, your energy, and your safety. You become aware of your surroundings. You learn patterns, yours and others. You notice when something feels off. You don't outsource responsibility for your life to romance or validation. That self-reliance builds a calm confidence that cannot be faked and cannot be taken. There is strength in emotional containment. A woman without boyfriends is not emotionally starved. She is emotionally selective. She doesn't give access to everyone who asks. She understands that attention is currency, and she spends it wisely. She is not reactive. She does not chase. She observes first, and observation is a form of control. When you live alone, your standards rise naturally, not because you are demanding, but because peace becomes your baseline. You no longer tolerate chaos disguised as passion. You no longer confuse intensity with intimacy. You stop romanticizing instability. Anyone who enters your life must add to the calm, not disturb it. That alone filters out most distractions. A woman like this understands solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is strategy. It is where strength is built quietly. It is where wounds heal without being reopened. It is where ambition sharpens. It is where boundaries become non-negotiable. Without a boyfriend defining her schedule or mood, she builds momentum. She invests in her body, her mind, her skills. She trains herself to be resilient. She learns to regulate her emotions instead of handing that responsibility to someone else. That makes her dangerous, in the best way, because she is no longer predictable through emotional dependency. She also understands power dynamics. She knows that needing less gives you leverage. When you are not desperate for affection, approval, or companionship, you cannot be easily controlled. You don't stay where you are disrespected. You don't negotiate your worth. You don't fear walking away. And the ability to walk away is one of the strongest positions a woman can hold. Living alone also builds presence. She doesn't fill silence with unnecessary words. She doesn't overshare. She listens more than she speaks. When she speaks, it matters. People feel her energy before they understand it. Calm, grounded, self-possessed. That presence commands respect without demanding it. This woman doesn't reject love. She simply refuses to be owned by it. She knows that partnership should be an addition, not a rescue mission. She will not shrink to be chosen. She will not perform to be kept. If someone enters her life, they enter as an equal, not as a center, not as a savior. And here is the truth many won't say out loud. A woman who can stand alone terrifies weak intentions. She cannot be rushed. She cannot be pressured. She cannot be guilted into staying where she doesn't belong. She sees through charm. She recognizes consistency over promises. She values actions over words. Her life is intentional. Her peace is protected. Her standards are enforced quietly, not loudly. She doesn't need to prove anything. She knows who she is because she built herself when no one was watching. That is the power of a woman living alone without boyfriends. Not isolation, but independence, not rejection, but discernment, not loneliness, but sovereignty. She is not waiting to be chosen. She already chose herself. Self-selection over validation is the moment a woman stops asking the world who she should be and starts deciding it for herself. It is the internal shift from being evaluated to being self-directed. Most people live their lives reacting to approval, rejection, attention, silence. A woman who chooses herself no longer waits to be picked, praised, or pursued to feel whole. She defines her own value first, and that reorders everything around her. Validation is addictive because it feels like safety. Being liked feels like protection. Being chosen feels like confirmation that you matter. But external validation is unstable by nature. It depends on moods, trends, attraction, convenience. When a woman ties her worth to it, she becomes flexible in the wrong ways. She bends her boundaries. She softens her standards. She explains herself when she shouldn't. Self-selection ends that cycle. It says, I decide what stays, what leaves, and what never gets access at all. A woman who selects herself is not arrogant. She is grounded. She has spent enough time alone to hear her own internal compass. She knows what drains her and what strengthens her. She knows the difference between chemistry and compatibility, between attention and respect. She no longer confuses being desired with being valued. That clarity comes from solitude, reflection, and the courage to disappoint others without betraying herself. When a woman stops seeking validation, her behavior changes in subtle but powerful ways. She no longer over-explains her choices. She doesn't audition for roles in people's lives. She doesn't negotiate her standards out of fear of being alone. Silence no longer scares her because she has learned to sit with it. Rejection no longer devastates her because she understands it often says more about alignment than worth. Self-selection creates emotional stability. When your identity is not outsourced, you are harder to shake. Compliments don't inflate you, and criticism doesn't collapse you. You listen, you assess, and you decide. That emotional containment is strength. It allows a woman to move through environments without absorbing every opinion, every judgment, every expectation placed on her. This kind of woman does not chase connection. She allows it. She observes how people show up over time instead of being seduced by intensity or promises. She understands that real interest reveals itself through consistency, not urgency. Because she is not seeking validation, she is not easily rushed. Pressure loses its power over her. She can walk away without drama, without revenge, without explanation. Self-selection also sharpens discernment. A woman who chooses herself sees red flags early because she is not trying to overlook them to be liked. She does not romanticize potential at the cost of reality. She pays attention to how people make her feel in their presence, not how they make her feel in moments of attention. She trusts her instincts because she has learned that ignoring them is always more expensive than listening. There is also discipline in self-selection. It requires saying no when yes would be easier. It requires walking alone when company would be comforting but costly. It means choosing long-term peace over short-term approval. That discipline builds self-respect, and self-respect changes posture, voice, decision-making. People feel it, they may not understand it, but they respond to it. A woman who selects herself does not compete. She does not compare timelines. She does not rush milestones to keep up with others. Her life moves at her pace, guided by alignment rather than pressure. She understands that being alone is not failure. Staying where you are diminished is. That belief makes her resilient. She does not settle because settling would require her to abandon herself, and she has already decided she will not do that again. This mindset also redefines attraction. When a woman no longer seeks validation, she becomes more magnetic because her energy is contained. She is not leaking neediness or insecurity. She is present, attentive, and composed. People feel safe around someone who is not constantly seeking reassurance. That safety is rare, and rarity creates value. Self-selection does not mean isolation or emotional coldness. It means intentional access. A woman like this is capable of deep connection, but only with those who meet her where she stands. She does not lower herself to be understood. She does not shrink to be loved. She understands that the right connections do not require self-erasure. At its core, self-selection is sovereignty. It is the decision to be the authority in your own life. It is the refusal to outsource identity to romance, attention, or approval. It is choosing to be rooted rather than reactive. Once a woman makes that choice, everything shifts. How she walks into rooms, how she handles conflict, how she loves, how she leaves. She becomes calm, not because life is easy, but because she is no longer at war with herself. Emotional independence is real power because it removes the leverage others have over you. The moment your emotional stability no longer depends on who stays, who leaves, who texts back, or who approves, you reclaim control over your inner world. That control is quiet, but it is absolute. It cannot be bargained with, threatened, or taken away. A woman who is emotionally independent cannot be easily manipulated because her peace is not for sale. Most people confuse emotional independence with emotional coldness. They are not the same. Emotional independence is not the absence of feeling. It is mastery over feeling. It is the ability to experience emotion without being ruled by it. A woman like this feels deeply, but she does not spiral. She acknowledges pain without dramatizing it. She allows disappointment without allowing it to define her. That self-regulation is strength, and it is built intentionally. When a woman is emotionally dependent, her reactions become predictable. Attention lifts her, silence crushes her, approval calms her, criticism destabilizes her. That predictability makes her vulnerable. Emotional independence disrupts that pattern. She does not hand emotional access to anyone without discernment. She does not chase reassurance. She does not beg for clarity. She observes behavior and responds, not reacts. This independence is developed through solitude and self-honesty. Living alone, spending time without emotional crutches, forces a woman to confront herself. There is no one to blame for her mood, no one to distract her from her thoughts. In that space, she learns what triggers her, what soothes her, and what strengthens her. She becomes familiar with her emotional patterns, and familiarity breeds control. An emotionally independent woman does not avoid connection. She chooses it consciously. She understands that attachment without self-regulation becomes captivity. She refuses to build bonds rooted in fear of abandonment. She will not stay somewhere simply to avoid being alone. That choice alone shifts power dynamics. When you are not afraid of loss, you cannot be easily coerced. This kind of woman listens more than she speaks. She watches how people handle stress, conflict, and silence. She understands that words are easy, but emotional consistency is rare. Because she does not need constant validation, she can afford to wait. She can afford to let people reveal themselves over time. Impatience no longer controls her decisions. Emotional independence also changes how a woman handles conflict. She does not escalate to be heard. She does not beg to be understood. She states her position clearly and allows others to respond however they choose. She knows that someone's inability to meet her emotionally is information, not a challenge to fix them. She releases the need to convince, rescue, or correct. This power shows up in restraint. She does not react to provocation. She does not explain herself to those committed to misunderstanding her. She does not fight for attention. Her silence is not passive. It is intentional. She understands that not every situation deserves a response, and not every person deserves access to her emotions. An emotionally independent woman also recovers faster. She experiences disappointment, but she does not dwell in it. She processes, learns, and moves forward. She does not romanticize pain or cling to what hurt her. She understands that holding on to emotional wounds gives them power, and she refuses to stay emotionally indebted to the past. Because she is not emotionally dependent, her standards remain intact under pressure. Loneliness does not push her into poor decisions. Chemistry does not override character. She does not confuse intensity with intimacy or vulnerability with attachment. She understands that true closeness requires safety, not chaos. There is also a deep sense of self-trust in emotional independence. A woman who has regulated her inner world trusts herself to handle whatever comes. She is not afraid of discomfort because she knows it is temporary. She does not fear being alone because she knows she can sit with herself without collapsing. That confidence is unshakable because it is earned, not given. This independence makes her presence powerful. She brings calm into rooms instead of chaos. She does not need to dominate conversations or seek attention. People feel grounded around her because she is grounded within herself. Her energy is steady, and steadiness is rare in a world addicted to emotional volatility. Emotional independence also protects her from manipulation disguised as affection. She recognizes guilt, pressure, and emotional withdrawal as control tactics, not expressions of love. Because she does not need to be needed, she does not fall into dynamics where her worth is tied to emotional labor. She understands that love should feel secure, not destabilizing. At its core, emotional independence is freedom. It is the ability to choose connection without losing yourself, to love without abandoning your boundaries, to walk away without being emotionally broken. It is knowing that no matter who comes or goes, you remain intact. That knowledge changes how a woman moves through the world, how she loves, how she speaks, how she leaves, because she is no longer negotiating with fear but acting from strength. Peace as a non-negotiable standard begins the moment a woman realizes that chaos is not a sign of depth, passion, or meaning. It is simply a signal of misalignment. For too long, turbulence has been romanticized as proof that something matters. Emotional highs and lows are mistaken for connection. Exhaustion is mistaken for effort. A woman who sets peace as her baseline no longer confuses emotional disturbance with value. She understands that what costs her nervous system is too expensive. When peace becomes non-negotiable, tolerance disappears, not tolerance for people, but tolerance for behaviors that erode stability. Disrespect, inconsistency, emotional volatility, mixed signals, and unspoken expectations lose their appeal. This woman does not argue herself into staying. She does not rationalize discomfort. She does not wait for chaos to turn into clarity. She listens to her body, because the body always registers the truth before the mind accepts it. A peaceful woman is not passive. She is precise. She knows exactly what disrupts her equilibrium, and she avoids it without apology. She does not need dramatic exits or emotional confrontations. Distance is her response. Silence is her boundary. Removal is her solution. She understands that protecting peace is not about control over others, but control over access to her life. Making peace non-negotiable requires emotional maturity. It means accepting that not everyone will understand your boundaries. Some will call you cold. Some will say you changed. Some will accuse you of being difficult. She lets them. She knows that people who benefited from her lack of boundaries will always resist her standards. Their discomfort is not her responsibility. A woman who values peace does not engage in unnecessary conflict. She does not need to win arguments or prove points. She understands that being right is irrelevant if it costs her inner calm. She chooses disengagement over dominance. That choice is often misunderstood as weakness, but it is discipline. It takes strength to walk away when ego wants to react. Peace also changes how she communicates. Her words are measured. She does not raise her voice to be heard. She does not explain herself repeatedly. She states once, clearly, and watches actions align or fall away. She understands that overcommunication is often a response to insecurity, not clarity. When peace matters, she speaks less and observes more. This standard reshapes her relationships. She no longer bonds through shared trauma. constant venting or emotional chaos. She is not drawn to people who need fixing. She is not attracted to instability disguised as intensity. Calm becomes attractive, consistency becomes desirable, safety becomes essential. Anyone who disrupts that without accountability is naturally filtered out. A peaceful woman is highly selective with her time. She does not fill her schedule to avoid herself. She values quiet mornings, controlled environments, and predictable routines. These are not signs of boredom, but of self-respect. She understands that peace is built through structure, not spontaneity driven by impulse. There is also power in how she handles provocation. She does not react immediately. She pauses, she assesses. She asks herself whether engagement will improve or disturb her internal state. Most of the time, the answer is clear. She lets things pass. She understands that attention feeds chaos and withdrawal starves it. Setting peace as non-negotiable also forces honesty. She can no longer lie to herself about what hurts her. She can no longer pretend that certain situations are tolerable when they are not. This honesty can feel lonely at first because it separates her from familiar patterns. But loneliness with peace is lighter than company with conflict. Her nervous system becomes her guide. If something creates constant anxiety, tension, or emotional instability, it does not belong. She does not wait for proof of harm. She trusts patterns. She trusts repetition. She understands that peace is not found in potential, but in reality. A woman like this recovers faster from disappointment because she does not attach her identity to outcomes. She does not spiral when things do not work out. She returns to center. She grounds herself in routine, self-discipline, and solitude. These are her anchors. They do not fail her. Peace also sharpens her intuition. When the noise is gone, clarity emerges. She can sense when something is off without needing evidence. She no longer doubts herself into confusion. She respects the signals she once ignored. That self-trust deepens because every time she protects her peace, she reinforces her authority over her own life. People respond differently to a woman who values peace. Some feel calm around her. Others feel exposed. Chaos cannot hide in her presence. Emotional games lose momentum. Manipulation loses traction. She is not reactive enough to be controlled. That alone shifts power dynamics. Peace as a standard also means she does not chase closure. She does not need final conversations or emotional explanations to move on. Understanding is internal, not negotiated. She closes doors quietly and completely. No resentment, no lingering attachment. Just resolution. This woman does not glorify struggle. She does not believe love should hurt or growth must be violent. She believes in steady progress, emotional safety, and quiet confidence. Her life may look simple from the outside, but it is deeply intentional. Choosing peace requires courage because it often means choosing yourself when others want access, attention, or control. It means disappointing people who benefited from your emotional availability. It means standing alone at times. She accepts that cost willingly because she understands that peace is not something you find. It is something you defend every day through decisions, boundaries, and restraint.